feeling of weight and impact in combat is a hallmark of Monster Hunter. Since its release in 2004, this characteristic has been a fundamental element of the franchise's identity and essence. Over the years, the developers have continually refined this dynamic, providing new titles with an increasingly epic and satisfying combat experience. But it was in Monster Hunter World that this characteristic reached its peak, thanks to an exquisite implementation of visual and sound effects. The developers managed to convey the best sense of weight and impact in the series. Wielding colossal weapons, feeling their weight and strength, has never been as satisfying as in Monster Hunter World. This detail was widely praised, becoming one of the game's main attractions, which undoubtedly was one of the elements that contributed to its huge success. However, in Monster Hunter Rise, some mechanical changes and simplifications were made to adapt to the launch console. Because of this, Monster Hunter Rise fell short in the aspect of weight and impact conveyed by the weapons, especially in weapons like the hammer and the greatsword, which no longer had the same feeling conveyed by the previous game. Monster Hunter Rise also received some negative criticism for its somewhat exaggerated particle effects, which created problematic visual pollution during four-player group hunts, especially against smaller monsters. On the other hand, it seems that Monster Hunter Wilds has not escaped the same problems. After experiencing the beta, some people reported the lack of impact in certain weapons, as well as the notable absence of elements that affect the satisfaction of using them. The most notable aspect was the hit stop, which became the main point discussed regarding the lack of impact. The feedback reached the developers, who promised to increase the hit stop in the final game. Despite the promise, other aspects of the gameplay also seem to be falling short, although they have not been as commented on as the hit stop. These aspects are equally important for the impact of the weapons, and it is precisely because they do not receive as much attention that I would like to discuss them in this video, in order to present where Wilds is failing and how it can improve compared to other games in the series. Before we proceed, let's analyze how hit stop behaved in the beta version and in the Wild trailers, and how it was adjusted by the development team after player feedback, adjustments that were later included in a new test version. For those who are not familiar, hit stop is a widely used feature in various game genres, crucial for enhancing the sensation of impact and conveying the perception of physical contact when striking an enemy. This technique consists of a brief pause or slowdown in the animation, at the exact moment of contact between the strike and the target. Generally, the more powerful the attack, the longer the duration of the hit stop, proportionally simulating the force and intensity of the attack. In Monster Hunter, hit stop has always been a present element, with one of the most notable examples being the true charge slash, the greatsword's most powerful strike. Below, we will see an example of how the absence of this mechanic would influence the perception of the strike. As demonstrated, hit stop is crucial for the sensation of weapon impact. However, in the beta, it was observed that the effect's action time was excessively reduced and absent in some movements, impairing the impact and satisfaction in the use of various weapons. Some examples of more effective weapons are Switch Axe. The reduction in hit stop not only affected this weapon, but also made it one of the most criticized for the lack of weight in its strikes. In the weapon's presentation video, an unusual lightness in its movements was already noticeable, both in axe and sword form. This is a result of the excessive reduction in hit stop, which becomes evident when compared to Monster Hunter World. For comparison purposes, let's analyze the hit stop duration in some specific attack movements, using milliseconds as the unit of measurement. As we can observe, the hit stop was notably lower in the WILDS beta version, even being non-existent in some attacks. In contrast, in World, the hit stop is present in all strikes and with a longer duration. Let's now see how this weapon behaves after the adjustments made based on feedback obtained during the beta. Its strikes now have a significantly longer hit stop, especially in the new elemental discharge. Before moving on to the next weapon, it's worth noting that the hit stop time is variable and depends on the region of the monster hit. For example, when attacking the Dasuguma's head or front paws, the hit stop will be considerably longer than if you hit its hind legs, which are not considered weak points. These differences are being taken into account in the comparisons. Great Sword. Probably the weapon most affected by the reduction of hit stop. Many commented, disappointed, that the weapon no longer conveyed the same feeling of force and weight in its attacks, appearing to possess less than half the power seen in World. A good part of this was due to the reduction of hit stop in its most powerful move, the true Charge Slash. As seen, the hit stop in this attack was half compared to World, compromising the intensity of the blow. As demonstrated in a video from this channel, it seems that the developers opted to create more shortcuts to the TCS, resulting in a decrease in the TCS's attack power and an increase in the damage applied by the weapon's regular blows. These changes required a decrease in hit stop in order to make it more cohesive with the new amount of damage caused. The same channel conducted a survey with its subscribers, questioning them about their opinions regarding the changes made to the weapon. Of more than 4,000 participants, more than 80% showed a preference for the weapon's previous state, in which the TCS presented greater difficulty in hitting, but caused more significant damage, in addition to the greater hit stop. This same feedback was observed during the beta period, resulting in adjustments. Since it doesn't need to be in contact with the target to perform its attacks, this weapon was not affected by the reduction of hit stop. In long-range weapons, other resources are used to assist in sensation of impact. Here we begin to notice that the problem of weapon impact goes beyond hit stop. In the case of the bow, the absence of some important visual resources is observed. One of them is the particle effect similar to wind vortices, which was added in Monster Hunter World, with the purpose of emphasizing the force of the shots. Another important resource absent in the beta was camera shake. Camera shake is an essential resource to express the weight, force, and intensity of elements in the scene, such as melee blows, projectiles, or distant objects. In the bow, camera shake was employed in two ways. First, there was a brief shake at the moment of firing, simulating the launch force of the arrow. When the arrow hit the target, a second, even more intense shake occurred, serving as confirmation of the shot's hit. After the adjustments, camera shake was added. However, in this version, the vibration only happens during the shot, appearing to have less intensity. It is also possible to notice the addition of wind particles, similar to those of World, but which are so subtle that they become imperceptible. In addition to the bow, several other weapons were harmed by the poor use of resources that do not include hit stop. However, there is a glaring example of a weapon affected by the misuse of the camera shake resource. The Gunlance, specifically in the use of one of the weapon's devices, the wormstake cannon. Camera shake was the main means of conveying the damage caused by the wormstake cannon. However, in Wilds, the shake is practically nil. As a result, the impact of the wormstake cannon seems insignificant compared to World. The particle effects also seem worse. In World, sparks were projected from the tail of the wormstake cannon, as if it were being propelled, piercing the monster before exploding. In Wilds, the sparks are scattered, not capturing the same emotion. The burst fire, one of the Gunlance's strongest attacks in Wilds, also appears to have half the impact of before due to the decrease in camera shake. I believe that the choice to reduce the shake was influenced by the new movements with the weapon, which include the new diagonal burst fire and the movements that use the combination of various burst fires and wormstake cannons. Due to this, using the same amount of shake as before could sound exaggerated. Still, I believe that, in the case of the wormstake cannon, the ideal would be to maintain a moderate level of shake instead of canceling it completely. In the sword and shield, the absence of camera shake in the perfect rush combo proved problematic. This combo depends on the precise timing of a button to reach the maximum attack. The shake, in addition to adding weight to the attacks, helped to confirm the correct execution of the combo, shaking the camera at the exact moment the command was hit. Being of great help to confirm the correct execution, such as when the character is hidden behind enemies or elements of the scenario. In Wilds, this effect was absent in the perfect rush, making the blow seem weaker, in addition to reducing precision feedback, leaving the player dependent only on the sound of the weapon to confirm if the combo was performed correctly. In a most recent build, the hit stop was increased, but the camera shake, although present, is not activated when the correct timing to press a button is hit, but only when the weapon hits the monster. In the Switch Axe's mounted elemental discharge, there was a high camera vibration that progressively intensified before the final explosion. In Wilds, this vibration only occurs during the moment of the explosion. The absence of this vibratory progression impacts the construction of the characteristic climax of the blow, which previously expressed the sensation of increasing force, while now, despite the numbers presented on the screen, it seems to concentrate all the damage in the final explosion. Another relevant detail is the lack of blade animation. In World, the Switch Axe's blade moved in sync with the released energy, simulating the weapon's mechanical aspect. In Wilds, the blade has no animations, making the discharge even less impactful and expressive. As for the Switch Axe's standard elemental discharge, it still has camera shake, but it appears to be extremely reduced compared to World. Giving greater focus to particle effects, we can comment on Lance. This weapon had a unique effect, absent in Wilds. The effect in question consisted of sparks projected towards the player, which reinforced the weapon's piercing aspect, its main characteristic. Unlike the bow, which had the addition of wind effects in Monster Hunter World, the Lance's spar particles were present since the classic games. In these, there were no numbers indicating damage. In the absence of this indicator, elements such as sparks help to signal the monster's weak points according to the amount expelled from the location. It is strange not to see it in Wilds, as it was present in all previous games, which, in addition to helping players identify the correct location to attack, also aided in the sensation of impact. Even after the adjustments, the presence of sparks is not noticeable. In the strike that started the Realm Breaker, there was a critical particle effect specific to this movement. This effect was visible when the blade's spirit level was sufficient to complete the Realm Breaker combo, serving as a visual indication that the blow would be executed correctly. This effect is not present in Wilds, and this seems to negatively impact this attack because, in its absence, the player depends only on the red highlight on the blade to confirm if the blow will be executed correctly, while before, it not only offered a clearer visual return, but also reinforced the power of the blow, providing a better sensation when using it. In the second test version, the longsword's focus mode blows receive the addition of red cut effects. However, the absence of the critical in the strike persists, leading to the belief that the removal may be intentional. In addition to the effects that were removed, there seems to be an inadequate use of some existing ones. In the case of the longsword, we see this in the Realm Breaker. This blow received additions, with the introduction of a new final movement for the combo. This movement consists of the hunter brandishing the sword, while propelling himself backwards, making multiple cuts, sheathing the weapon, and finishing the combo. However, this addition seems to overshadow the impact of the first attack, which, before the addition, was the main blow of the combo. This occurs because this new movement can be executed immediately after the first attack, being visually more flashy and causing dispersed damage. These effects, mixed with the particles and damage numbers caused previously, give the impression of being a single movement, causing the sensation that the initial blow was not effective. Added to this is the lack of camera shake in the initial blow, which contributes even more to the old final blow of the Realm Breaker completely losing its impact. The original blow of the Realm Breaker also underwent changes in its visual and presentation. In World, the cut came from above, producing a luminosity effect on the screen, while decreasing its thickness and dissipating from top to bottom. In Wilds, the cut displays undulations in its form, and there is no presence of luminosity on the screen. Furthermore, the cut appears suddenly and disappears in the same proportion. The position in which the effect is presented also changed. Before, the cut followed the tip of the sword. Now, it appears above the character, disconnected from the action. These changes seem to be a simplification of what we saw previously or mean that the resource is still in development. Another longsword move that presents similar issues is the Iai Slash. In Monster Hunter World, it displayed a very detailed appearance, consisting of a bright red horizontal slash, accompanied by prism effects. In Wilds, its form is slightly different, being less voluminous, making a slight curve in the animation. Its brightness is less intense, and the prisms are not present. Just like the Realm Breaker, the Iai Slash exhibits peculiar behavior. In this case, the visual effect of the slash is displayed even when the counterattack is unsuccessful. In Monster Hunter World, the slash also appeared when the Iai Slash was executed out of time, but there was a purpose. In World, the player could use it to inflict massive damage without needing to hit the counterattack timing. However, hitting it maintained the blade level, while missing it resulted in the loss of that level. In Monster Hunter Wilds, the Iai Slash underwent changes in its dynamics, starting to share characteristics of Monster Hunter Rise, where missing the counterattack does not consume the blade level, encouraging the player to focus more on this mechanic without penalizing them for mistakes. However, in Rise, when the Iai Slash is executed incorrectly, in addition to the blade level not being consumed, the visual effect is not displayed. This same behavior should occur in Wilds, since it uses the same dynamics of Rise, where the Iai Slash is active only when the counterattack is performed correctly. But what is observed is the effect being displayed, as in Monster Hunter World, and not being consumed. This inconsistency between the visual behavior and the functionality of the Iai Slash creates a conflict with the purpose of the move. If the goal is to encourage the player to hit the counterattack, the visual effect of the move should be displayed only when the counterattack is precisely executed, as occurs in Monster Hunter Rise. The red slash being visible even when missing the counterattack, in addition to nullifying the impact of the move when hit, can even confuse new players, making them think they are performing the move correctly, because there is a visual response even when executing it incorrectly. In summary, the Iai Slash and the Realm Breaker present design problems that compromise the impact of the weapon and the overall player experience. The strange behavior in the visuals can also be observed in the TCS critical effect. Its appearance has been altered. In World, it featured a dense red cut that expanded, forming spark particles around it. A detail is that during the first and last blows performed in the TCS, an intense glow could be seen on the screen. In Wilds, the critical effect appears to be simpler, changed to a red vertical cut, similar to the new Realm Breaker, and it also possesses the same animation, in which the particles appear and disappear abruptly, leaving trails of red dust before vanishing completely. It also exhibits a strange behavior, with the effect manifesting at the end of the animation and not at the moment when the blow hits the monster, as occurred in Monster Hunter World. This alteration seems to compromise the function given to the critical particles, which is precisely to emphasize the impact of the attack. By appearing at the end of the movement, the effect loses its purpose, resulting in a disconnection between the action of the blow and the visual response of the game. Considering the visual impact, I believe that the previous version was more efficient in expressing the magnitude of this attack. The offset attacks corroborate this statement, as they share all the characteristics of the original TCS, possessing a prolonged hit-stop, luminosity on the screen, and spark particles, efficient in expressing the destructive force of the impact. In conclusion, the new effect used in the TCS is a step backward. In addition to the weapons mentioned, several others also face similar problems. To conclude, I would like to highlight two unique elements of Monster Hunter World that were an essential part of the sensation of impact in all weapons, but were removed in Monster Hunter Wilds. One of them is the shine on the scales. In Monster Hunter World, when attacking a monster, an intense shine in the hit area highlighted the part of the body that had suffered damage, simulating the impact of an iron weapon against the monster's hard scales. In Monster Hunter Wilds, this effect was drastically reduced, making the luminosity subtle to the point of being imperceptible. Another characteristic that corroborated the impact of the weapons was the pieces that broke off from the monsters. This was an aspect of the game that was heavily criticized before launch, as it seemed like a type of censorship or replacement for blood. However, this element contributed to immersion, efficiently illustrating the damage inflicted by weapons on the monster scales. This effect was particularly noticeable in blunt weapons, such as the hammer, which, due to its use, cause a greater amount of fragments and dust particles. Amidst the cloud of particles generated, shock waves were visible with each impact. In Monster Hunter Wilds, this detail was replaced by sand particles, which do not convey the same feeling weakening the visual impact of the weapons in general, especially blunt weapons, such as the hammer and hunting horn. The removal of visual elements, such as fragments and shine on scales, for something more discreet, suggests that the developers want to avoid exaggerated effects. However, paradoxically, there are other elements that seem to visually pollute the game, contradicting this pursuit. I'm referring to the damage indicator, which has received new features and changes that seem to be causing this visual pollution. The damage indicator has undergone several modifications since its introduction in World. Initially, the damage number font was orange, with a white highlight upon appearance. When low damage was applied to resistant parts of the monster, the font size was reduced and the numbers turned white with a medium degree of transparency. Strong blows applied to resistant parts had an orange overlay, maintaining transparency. In critical hits, a star symbol was discreetly visible below the number. In Rise, the damage indicator was simplified, with the font changed to larger yellow numbers with black borders. White numbers lost transparency, and there is no visual indication of critical damage. In Wilds, the World font was maintained, but within large size without the white highlight upon appearance, and the colors changed from orange to yellow, gaining a red overlay when the blow hits open wounds. White numbers remain as in Rise, but without the font size difference, having practically the same proportion as the yellow damage. It also lacks the original transparency of World. The new font presents differences in behavior, with damage numbers being displayed in a dispersed manner, scattered across the screen, instead of centralized at the point of impact, as in World. Furthermore, numbers of different colors and symbols were added, such as the one used to indicate damage to wounds. During the fight against Ulfduna, blue numbers with a shield symbol next to them are observed, which seem to represent the monster's resistance. The critical damage symbol was changed to a red beam below the number. The exaggerated size of the damage indicator, the sharpness of the white numbers, the profusion of colors and symbols, and the dispersed presentation of the numbers create a confusing mix that diverts the player's attention and obscures the monster's vision. Unlike Monster Hunter World, which balanced visual information with aesthetic clarity, the current game presents an exaggeration that could be avoided with other visual resources. As we have observed, hit stop, although important, is not the only factor that defines the impact of weapons. The absence or inadequate use of other visual resources makes the weapon seem less impactful than in previous games. The absence of some visual effects, in addition to negatively affecting the impact, suggests that the developers are seeking a cleaner aesthetic. But, at the same time, they contradict themselves by implementing various on-screen information, such as the new types of damage numbers, raising serious concerns about the team's design decisions. In short, these are the points I wanted to address. There is a promise of improvements in hit stop. However, as for the other details, we must wait to see how they will be at launch.